A continuación, le damos la bienvenida a nuestro productor Roberto Maduro, quien nos presentará una amena entrevista con la doctora Atalia Shragai, miembro de la Facultad de Historia del Kibbutzim College en Tel Aviv, quien se encontraba en Panamá haciendo una investigación sobre la construcción de la carretera panamericana en los años 50. Veamos.
Muchas gracias, Andrea. Aquí tengo el placer de recibir a la doctora Atalia Shragai. La doctora Shragai es miembro del Departamento de Historia de la Facultad de Humanidades y Ciencias Sociales del Kibbutzim College of Education de Tel Aviv, la principal universidad para el entrenamiento de maestros y profesores para colegios primarios y secundarios. La doctora Shragai hizo su tesis de maestría sobre la presencia colonial de la United Fruit Company en Centroamérica y Panamá entre 1900 y 1960. Hizo su disertación para su doctorado sobre la migración estadounidense a Costa Rica entre 1945 y 1980. Ahora se ha ganado una beca del Israel Science Foundation para realizar una investigación de 3 años sobre la construcción de la carretera panamericana entre 1923 y 1962. Welcome, Dr. Shragai.
Thank you so much for having me here.
My first question, you were born in Israel. You've lived and studied there most of your life, not to say your whole life. Why the interest in Central America?
Oh, that's an excellent question, which if I had $1 for every time that I was asked about it, I wouldn't have to apply to any research grant. Yeah, indeed, I have no Latin American background, unlike the big Latin American community in Israel. I wasn't born in Latin America. My family wasn't born there. It was only at a very late age of my studies that I decided to focus on Central America. I was visiting Central America. I was just backpacking in Costa Rica, in Panama, in Guatemala. It was in the early millennium. And I was overwhelmed by the US presence in this region. To what extent, the extent to which you meet US Americans, not Americans, US Americans in this place, and the fact that they owned so many territories and so many fields of economic life. And I thought that it's interesting to look at this phenomenon and to see why are they here. How do they construct their identity vis-a-vis the US and the places that they live in? So first of all, I got involved I focused on the United Fruit Company and its compounds along the coasts. And then I was looking at the US migration to Costa Rica, but not a contemporary one, which is, you know, well studied and everyone is overwhelmed by how many US Americans live there, but the ones that took place during the Cold War. There were both people who came with the US administration as part of the Cold War and people who were against this administration and against US imperial policies, both in Latin America and in Asia, and they came as a counter-response for it. First, there were the Quakers, who established Monteverde in the early 1950s, and then the hippies and the counterculture people who flocked to Costa Rica in the late 1960s, early 1970s, founded it as a pacifist haven.
So there were political refugees in a way.
Yeah, they were looking at themselves.
They were not persecuted, obviously,
No,
but
no.
it was a conscious decision to leave because of their politics.
Exactly. This is how they saw themselves, as refugees of the United States, both of the political system and of the consumerism and the mainstream society, and they wanted to get a fresh start in a place that they perceived as heaven. And I'm not sure that they really took full responsibility for the ways they have influenced Costa Rica and changed it in many ways.
I understand for your first research regarding the United Fruit Company and their presence, their very important and in many ways negative presence in Central America, or in Latin America, because they were also in South America in some countries. You were here in Bocas del Toro several years back doing your research. If you can talk to us a little bit about that.
The main methodology that I employ in all my research, as well as the current one, about the Pan-American Highway is oral histories. I go to places and I interview people, and I'm very lucky if I find people, and usually I am, who are willing to share their stories, and I hope that I do justice with it. So I landed in Panama City, and we took a very small airplane, and we went to Bocas del Toro, which was a significant hub of a United Food Company from the 1920s onwards. I've spoken with former employees, both descendants of the immigrants from the Caribbean, both US Americans who still live there, I remember I was talking with a very nice lady, Chinese Panamanian, and they told me about their experience with the company, which is very complex. It's always not just negative. It's both negative and positive. Since we are talking about oral history, it's always affected by the present. I mean, we are talking about the past, but it's always affected by the present. How do they see it in retrospect?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like anything is life, it's not black or white. It's somewhere in between, right?
Yeah, the nickname of United Food Company in Costa Rica was Mamita Yunai, small mother.
That I did not know. Tell us a little bit about your actual research, which is what brings you to Panama in this occasion.
Okay, so as I'm interested in power relations between the United States and Central America, broadly conceived. First of all, I think Central America is one of the most fascinating, for me, the most fascinating region in the Americas. It's neither North America, it's nor South America. It's in between, and the places that are in between are always the most interesting one. And of course, as we are talking now in Panama City, the influence, the presence of the United States in Central America was most significant, especially in Panama. So I always trying to look at these relations between Central America and the United States, but from bottom up, not top down, not political or diplomatic history, but how people are influencing the history, the relations. And the Pan American Highway is an amazing story. The idea to connect the Americas, conceived in the late 19th century, first in the railways, and after World War I, the First World War, in highways and motor cars. And it was part of the idea of the United States, received of it as a way to include Latin America under its influence. It was a way of like bringing all the Americas together, but under US influence, under US sphere of influence. And the decision to construct the Pan American Highway was accepted in the Pan American Congress in Santiago de Chile in 1923. But it took several more years, and then we get to the good neighborhood policy, which substituted the gunboat policy and the dollar diplomacy. And then it was like, yeah, this is what good neighbors are doing. They're visiting each other. But for the United States, it was envisioned as a one-way highway all the way from the US-Mexico border to Patagonia that would bring to the United States all the raw materials like bananas and rubber and stuff, and would export to Latin America televisions, cars, Hollywood movies, ideologies, everything. And of course, the Latin American countries were very much ambivalent. On the one hand, it offered a way of progress, a means for creating huge infrastructures. On the other hand, and especially for Panama, it was a precedent. It was, you already had the Panama Canal. Now the United States is going to construct another infrastructure and to hurt the sovereignty of Latin American countries. But what will actually happen that the road that was supposed to be a US imperial tool became very much a tool of the Latin American countries for their own interests.
To finish, I know that you have found out that in Panama, it took a very particular way of going about it. In Panama, the government created a campaign for all citizens to donate cement to be able to build this road in 1952. Since most of our viewers were probably not born then, they probably do not know of this story. Could you tell us very briefly, because we're almost out of time, what you have learned recently about that campaign in Panama?
First of all, I have to say that you were the ones that told me about it in the first place. And I found out that in the beginning of 1952, it was the hottest news event. It was every day at the first page of La Estrella. People were asked to donate money for cement sacks. And there was a thermometer in the center of Panama City.
En la Plaza 5 de Mayo.
Yeah, in the center of Panama City, where they added the cement sacks until they reached the target, the target number. And this is how the highway from Panama to David was paved with cement. And I think it's a beautiful example to the way that the Pan American Highway was in no way a U.S. initiative or enterprise, or no way solely only that. It was also a national project.
Excellent, thank you very much. Fortunately, we've run out of time. Si algún televidente tiene algún material fotográfico, documental o anecdótico sobre la construcción de la carretera panamericana en Panamá, favor contactar a la doctora Shragai al correo atalia.shragai@smkb.ac.il. Obviamente va a aparecer en la pantalla. Thank you very much, Dr. Shragai.
Muchas gracias.
Regresamos contigo, Andrea.